2:1. Today we're going to be looking at Genesis chapter 31. The chapter begins in verse 1 with Jacob hearing that the sons of Laban are saying, Jacob has taken away everything that was our father's, and from what was our father's, he has gained all of his wealth. And then Jacob sees that Laban doesn't view him as favorably as he once did, and so Jacob decides, it's time for me to leave. I need to get out of here. And so he calls his family together, and he retells the story that we looked at yesterday in Genesis chapter 30 to them, kind of to let them see that Laban has been cheating them. It's time that they need to leave. And so they do leave, and there's an interesting bit of information given to us. Rachel, in verse 19, steals her father's household gods. Well, when Laban finds out that Jacob and his family have left, he pursues him, and he pursues him for 7 days. And when he finally overtakes Jacob, he says, "What have you done? Why have you left me? Why have you taken my family away? Why have you stolen my household gods?" And Jacob says, "You can look and see if the household gods are in here." And he doesn't find them because Rachel is sitting on them. And then Jacob becomes angry with Laban over all of this. But the chapter ends with a covenant being made between Laban and Jacob. Verse 48 says, Laban said, "This heap is a witness between you and me today." Therefore he named it Gilead and Mizpah, for he said, "The Lord watch between you and me when we are out of one another's sight. If you oppress my daughters, or if you take wives beside my daughters, although no one is with us, see, God is witness between you and me." David?
I want us to really look at the ideas in the first 5 verses of Genesis chapter 31. We see the attitude or the disposition of both Laban and his sons change toward Jacob. And I'm just going to tell you that seems to be a quirk of human nature. We're often very fickle in our attitudes and our disposition toward others. The old adage, "What have you done for me lately?" kind of comes to mind. But the contrast to that is also found in these verses. In verse 5 it says, "But the God of my father has been with me." And in verse 3, God says, "I will be with you." What we need to do is, even though it does hurt, it stings when friends or people we trusted in before change their disposition or attitude toward us. We need to make sure that we put our confidence and trust in the Lord. I think about Psalm 118 and verse 8, "It's better to take refuge in the Lord than in men." And that is surely true and a lesson for us from this text and also the psalmist.
Amen. And I wanted to build off of that a little bit. There's an interesting pattern that's continued here. Throughout the book of Genesis, we have a story being told and then a retelling of the story many times. And so here in chapter 31, Jacob retells the story that the writer of Genesis tells us in chapter 30. And often when that happens, there's little details that are added in that give us kind of an idea of what's going on. And so here, Jacob retells this story from Genesis chapter 30. And in verse 5, he says, "I see that your father does not regard me with favor as he did before, but the God of my father has been with me." And then verse 6, "You know that I have served your father with all my strength, yet your father has cheated me and changed my wages." Jacob, in this telling of this story, says, "Your father has cheated me over and over again." And what we see is that God has been with him. At the end of verse 7, "But God did not permit him to harm me." God has been with Jacob. He's been protecting Jacob. And I think there's a really simple point from that. God protects those who are his. God has made the promises to Abraham and now to Jacob. Jacob is his. He's going to protect him. And I think we need to see that in our own lives as well. If we are God's, he is going to protect us. That doesn't mean that we're not going to suffer, that people aren't going to persecute us, but ultimately, if you belong to God, God is going to protect you.
Amen.
Well, we want to thank you for joining us again today. We hope that this helped you in some way. And if you have any thoughts on Genesis chapter 31, go ahead and jot those down in the bottom in the comment section. We'd love to interact with you on that. We hope you all have a great day, and God bless.